This is a 2014 911 Turbo, and it is everything that a sports car is supposed to be. It'll do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds and a top speed of 195 miles an hour. Today, I'm going to be telling you why you should be buying one of these instead of the new ones. I'm Aiden, and you're watching God Next. Now let's talk about the price of this car. As it sits right now, it's about $120,000, which is still a lot of money. Anything over $100,000 for a car is going to be a lot. And yes, it has nearly 50,000 miles on it, but these new were $182,000 in 2014 money. So you're looking at over $200,000 in today's money. And a brand new one of these starts at $180,000, and the options quickly bring it up from there. So $120,000 for one of these cars is a bargain when it comes to a fun, fast sports car like a 911 Turbo. And that's why it is so important, even though this is a 991.1 generation, to consider this car. Now let's talk about the powertrain of the 911 Turbo from 2014. This is a 3.8 liter twin turbo flat six, makes 520 horsepower, 487 pound-feet of torque. Yes, that is less than the current 911 Turbo makes, but that doesn't make this car any less fun. Like I said, 195 mile an hour top speed and a 2.7 second 0 to 60. It's mated to a 7-speed dual clutch automatic. As everyone knows, it's called the PDK, and I'll throw up what that means on the screen, but it's some long German word. And the benefit of how they've done the engine, as you can notice, you can't see anything. It's not a mid-engine car. This is a rear-engine car, and the benefit of that is it makes it a near-perfect weight distribution, which is why the 911s are so fast. It sits over the rear axle of the car. Yes, the downside is you cannot see your engine, but the plus side is you have tons of additional traction to the rear wheels because it is putting a bunch of weight over that axle. Now on the back of the 911 Turbo, as you can see, it looks exactly like many of the 911s out there do, but there are some key indicators that show this is a turbo model. First is going to be this spoiler, which actually has a deployable part on the top of it, which can extend at high speeds to improve downforce. You also have these air pass-throughs down here, and there are radiators in there, which is where additional cooling for the engine is. You also have these quad exhaust pipes, which are on the Turbo. Here's what the engine sounds like. Now on the side of the 911, it's important to point out this car is finished in Guards Red, which is still a color that you can get to this day. As for your tires and your wheels, you have 20-inch wheels all the way around, and you have these 245 tires up front. These are PS4s, and in the back you also have PS4s, 305s back there. As for the brakes up front, you have these 16.1-inch drilled rotors with these 6-piston brake calipers. Now in the back, you have 15.4-inch rotors with 4-piston calipers. If you didn't know, because this car is rear engine, your gas cap is up front right here instead of in the back. I know a lot of people don't know that about the 911s. Now this one is also equipped with PDCC, which is Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, and I'll show you the button for that in the interior, but it allows you to adjust the suspension settings. That way you can create a harsher or a less harsh ride whenever you want based on the environment that you are in. Now, moving towards the back, you also have these massive air intakes for the engine right here. They're really cool. You'll see them on the 911s and 911 Turbo S's. Now, on the front of the Turbo, you're gonna have all these air pass-throughs for additional cooling and aerodynamics, where we have these radiators up here in the fender for cooling. And the cool thing and interesting about this is you have these headlight washers right here that spray liquid onto the headlights so you can clean them. You don't see that in many cars, but of course, Porsche would go to those amount of lengths to get you to be able to have an enjoyable ride and make sure that nothing gets on your headlights. Of course, you also have a frunk on the 911 Turbo, so you can store some things. It's not very big, but it's big enough for any small size carry-on bags, and if you wanted to fit groceries in there, you could, but definitely can't fit a human in there. So if you're thinking about doing that, the 911 is not for you. Check out our Rivian video where you can fit a human in the frunk. Now on the inside of the 911 Turbo, yes, the interior is a little dated compared to what you have now, but that doesn't mean you don't get modern creature comforts in here. The gauge cluster is nice. It's finished in Guards Red, just like the exterior of the car is, and you have this little screen in there that shows you different information, performance information, navigation information, and your infotainment information. This thing actually will tell you things like your torque split, your G-forces, your power levels based on your driving habits and everything that you've done in the past. It's really cool, really descriptive. It's just not as cool as the newer one where you have some massive screen that tells you a bunch of stuff. The infotainment system, of course, is going to be a little dated, but for the controls in the center, if you've ever seen a 991.2, which only went out about 4 years ago, this is very similar, just a little dated compared to that, but you do have heated and cooled seats on these 18-way power seats. And on these seats, you have the Porsche crest in the headrest, and you have the red contrast stitching all over the interior. Speaking of the contrast stitching in here, every surface you're going to be touching is nice and soft. Car is very comfortable to be in. I know it looks small on the outside. It's nice in here. Down here in the center control stack, this is where you can actually deploy that front spoiler you have up front and the deployable rear one by pressing this button, and it will extend those spoilers for you. You also have your PDCC button down here. That's your Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control. That's where you can control the suspension on this car for the different environments that you're going to be in, Sport and Sport Plus 2. This one also has a moonroof right here. That way you can open and close it. This one also had the carbon fiber interior package spec'd on it. Carbon fiber all over the dashboard, even on the shift lever right here for that PDK and on the door. Now, it being a 911, you're of course not going to get much interior storage in here. The glove box is very small, but you do have a 12-volt socket in there, and you have an SD card reader up in your infotainment system for more connectivity, but you don't really have any USB ports or anything like that in here. And your glove box is a decent size. In there, you have a USB Type A, an auxiliary port, and another 12-volt socket. This is very similar to how Bentleys from this era were. It's a little more technologically advanced, but in this era, the Bentleys had everything in the glove box, and you had to have like a wire stretching out of it if you wanted to charge your phone or something like that. It's just some oversight that the Volkswagen Group went through on their higher end cars. Nothing bad like that. But overall, it's a very comfortable interior, and I don't think Porsche could have done any better. Oh, one more thing before we sign off here. This has the Sport Chrono package on it, which means this can turn into a lap timer up here, and you have a lap timer inside of the gauge cluster's screen, and just in case you want to go to the track and really push your turbo to its limits.
The 911 Turbo is a unique car. In fact, all 911s are just unique sports cars in their own right. They perform like supercars, but they're priced typically around $100,000 to $150,000 less than supercars out there. They have tons of heritage, including the fact that the key for turning on the car is on the left side of the steering wheel, which is something that pays heritage to Le Mans racing when Porsche's vehicles were in there. And that's why they put the keys on the left side of their vehicles in all of their Porsche models, even down to the Macan. Of course, the Turbo S is a tiny bit faster, and that really is the epitome of the sports car, is the Turbo S. But that doesn't mean the Turbo doesn't have that same it doesn't make as much power. You lose probably about 10% of your power compared to if you were to just go get a Turbo S for roughly $40,000 more. That doesn't mean the Turbo's not great. In fact, this one is so highly spec'd that it has everything the Turbo S has except for the extra power, which makes it a tiny bit slower, but not that much slower. 3,500 pounds is about the weight this has, and when you pair 3,500 pounds with perfect weight distribution, an amazing dual clutch automatic transmission, and 520 horsepower, you're looking for literally the best combination to make the perfect storm of fun, speed, luxury, and handling. It drives so well. And I'm not gonna launch the car because it's not my car, so I'm not gonna launch it, but it does have launch control. And it rockets from 0 to 60 in around 2.8 seconds, which is blisteringly quick, and it was faster than every other comparable supercar in this price range at the time this was new. Most of everyone's reservations are going to be that this is a nearly 10-year-old car, and it is. But it drives like it was made in 2023, and it still feels brand new on this interior. 42,000 miles, and this interior has kept up other than the technology. Nothing has broken, and Porsches typically are pretty bulletproof when it comes to their mechanical parts and their electronics, so I don't foresee anybody really running into any issues in this 911. $120,000 is nothing to scoff at. That is a lot of money for a lot of people, and not many people out there have $120,000 to spend on a car, loan or cash. But there are a lot less people who have $270,000 to spend on a car, which is about what a new one of these will run you at the dealership. So, would you rather spend $120 or $270? And it allows a lot more people to get into vehicles like this one that have this much power, that handle this well. Because, I'll be honest with you, this is better feeling to drive than a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, bar none. It was 3 years ago, I had the chance to drive a 488 GTB and a GT3 RS on a track. I will take the GT3 RS every day of the week. It was fun, it handled better, it carved corners up. It was amazing. And that feeling is something you get in every single Porsche out there. That's why I love this brand. The PDK is so responsive, and I love the pops and burbles that you get. It's just perfect. I've never been in a car like the 911s. I've done now 2 Turbo S's, I've done a Taycan, and now this is my first turbo. And the 911 Turbo S's were incredibly fun and incredibly fast. But for $120,000, I think this is the sweet spot. It also calms down really well to become an everyday road car. Like I said, these are the 18-way power adjustable seats. They're not stiff carbon bucket GT3 seats. You can drive this around like an everyday GT car, which is the point of the turbo models. It is not to take it to a track all the day. This is very comfortable. You could drive it across country if you wanted. Heated and cooled seats, dual zone climate control, Bluetooth stereo. This is perfect for a driver car that you can take across the country, and on top of that, it doesn't get bad gas mileage either. We brought this up here with a little over half a tank, and we're not even down to a quarter yet, and it gets on average around 20 miles per gallon combined, which for a car with this much power and this speed is not bad. The induction noise of the turbo engine of that 3.8 liter flat six is incredible, and it's intoxicating. It's absolutely perfect. This car is perfect. Every 911 is near perfection. And for $120,000, I think I have found the perfect price 911 ever.
And that is the 2014 Porsche 911 Turbo. And I think for every dollar you would spend on this, it is worth it. It's lost about half of its value compared to what it was back in 2014. And I absolutely think if you're looking for one of the best sports cars ever made that has tons of performance and tons of luxury, this is the one you should buy. Yes, it is not the newest one with all the technology, and it makes less power, and it is a little slower than the newer ones, but who can say no to a sports car that has a top speed of nearly 200 miles an hour for the money? Because I can tell you what, comparable options for similar performance aren't 120 grand. They're more like 200. So anyways, guys, buy this if you have the money for it and you're in the market for a 911. I'm Aiden, and this is God Next.